Hello, witches. Halloween is coming up. Are y'all excited? Samhain, All Hallows Eve. I'm excited. It's my favorite holiday, my favorite Sabbath. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. I want to talk about what does Samhain mean? What is the energies going on at this time of year, at this Sabbath coming up? And then I also want to talk about necromancy a little bit later. So Samhain. People talk a lot about the thinning of the veils. They say the veils thin at this Sabbath, Samhain, All Hallows Eve. So what does that mean? I want you all to understand what it means that the veil is thinning, so that you can better understand this Sabbath and use its energy more effectively and for the ways that you want, really. So, the thinning of the veils. To begin with, what is the veil? You need to know what the veil is before we can talk about what it means that it's thinning. So the veil is like a barrier or a wall of energy that is separating the physical realm and the spiritual realm. And this goes for all spiritual realms. There's not like different barriers for each one or whatever. It's just like spirit and the physical, or non-physical and physical. This veil separates those two. And when I say it's like a barrier or a wall, it is really, you need to think about it in terms of like static on a radio signal or on a TV signal. When static blocks the signal from being transmitted, that is what the veil does. It is a barrier of energy that blocks the physical from the spiritual and the spiritual from the physical. So when we talk about the veil thinning, what we're saying and what we're talking about is that that barrier of energy that would be blocking the signal is clearing up, like that static is clearing up. And so that barrier is not blocking the physical and non-physical anymore, or to such a degree. I mean, the veil's always there, even during Halloween, even during when it's thinned. It is still there, but it's just so thin that interaction can be done between the physical and the spiritual. So this is what happens during this time of year. From the Sabbath of Mabon all the way through Halloween, all the way to the winter solstice, the veil is thin. So from Mabon to Halloween, the veil thins, it begins thinning. Halloween is the peak of thinness of the veil. And then from Halloween through to the winter solstice, it begins to thicken again. So during this time of year, a lot of people who are just normal people who don't know anything about the occult or anything will more likely experience spiritual activity and ghosts and all that, because this veil naturally thins during this time of year. Now, if you're like a psychic or a medium or just a witch or like whatever that works with spirits, you can clear up the veil on your own. Like I was given the example that it's like static. You can clear up that signal on your own during any time of the year and work with the spirits and interact with them and all that. But it's just that the natural cycles do it during this time of year. So that is what the thinning of the veil is. And that is what Halloween and Samhain is all about. And it's just really good to know how that works so you can understand what's going on in these physical realms and spiritual realms and how that veil is thinning, so you can better use this time of year to your advantage and to your benefit. So a lot of people will commune with their ancestors during Samhain. For me personally, I noticed that my greatest cycle of power is from Mabon through to the winter solstice. Just the dark half of the year in general. I've always noticed that I'm just more powerful during this time of year. So it really excites me that Halloween is coming up. Because I work a lot with spirits and spiritual entities and beings, and it makes sense that that would be my greatest cycle of power. So I'm going to do more videos, y'all, about the Sabbats, probably as they come. So right now I'm just talking about Samhain and Halloween because that's what's coming up. But I will be talking about the other Sabbats as their time draws near. So I'm not going to do that anytime soon or like consecutively throughout my posts and videos. It's just going to be as they come up. So now I want to talk about necromancy, because there's a whole branch of magic and witchcraft that is called necromantic witchcraft. And necromancy is a branch even within that. Necromancy is about really summoning dead spirits or deceased people, their souls, and communicating with the spirit or the soul, and really divination through the dead. That's what necromancy really means. It means divining through the dead. But there is other branches of necromantic witchcraft that are not just about divination, but they're about working with the dead or working with the forces of death itself. Not necessarily a dead person or a dead being, but just with the forces of death itself. So before I get into the different branches, I just want to talk about necromantic witchcraft itself so that you can understand this kind of branch of magic. It has a lot of misinformation about it, and there's a lot of a stigma to it about that it's evil and bad and that you should stay away from it. And now all of that comes from the fact that it is dangerous if you do not know what you're doing, or if you do not know how to control these forces. Then yes, it is dangerous. So I'm going to go ahead and say this right now in this video, a warning that necromantic witchcraft is dangerous if you do not know what you're doing, y'all. So don't just dive into it if you're a beginner. You really need to have your willpower and your ability to control energies and forces and even spirits before you start to do this type of magic, because basically with necromantic witchcraft you are summoning and evoking forces of death. So if you don't know what you're doing, that can be harmful and even fatal to you. So just be very careful and be very respectful and approach this seriously if you're going to be doing this type of magic. So necromantic witchcraft, working with the forces of death. You guys, think about what is death for a minute. Think about what death is. A lot of people misperceive that death is a state of being, that it's like you just die, or that something just dies, and that's like the end of that object or being or whatever it is, a plant, an animal, whatever. People think of it as a state of being, but really, that's not what death is, y'all. Death is ultimately a transformative process, because you look at nature. Just analyze these things, y'all. Look at when something dies in nature. I'm not talking about when a person dies and they embalm it and bury it and all that. That's unnatural. I'm talking about when something dies in nature, you know, where it falls, where it dies, it stays there. And what happens to it? It begins to decay, whether by the forces of nature itself, like rain and weather, whether it's by other animals coming along and, you know, whatever they do, eat it, drag it around, whatever, insects come in and start to take it apart, and all the way down, it basically dissolves the living being that was living before, that once it has died or expired, these forces of decay come in and begin to dissolve it back into nature. And then what happens to it then? Well, each part and piece of that being then goes into fueling some other living creature or some other living being, then takes those parts and pieces into itself. And so, what is death? Death is a transformative process. It is nature's way of recycling things. You guys, in science, there's that law, the law of the conservation of energy, that says that no energy is ever created or destroyed, but that energy just is, and that it changes shape and form and just transforms. So that's what's really going on with death. That's the same thing. It's transforming what was once a living being into other things. So really, when you analyze it at this level, y'all, death and life are not opposites. They're not polar opposites. Death is not antagonistic to life. When you analyze it at these levels and you understand it at these levels, death is really conducive to life, because it's like a recycling. Like I said, it recycles what has died and expired. It recycles all of that energy into fueling more life. So when you're working with necromantic witchcraft, what you're doing is you are tapping into the death energies, the death forces, the really ultimate form of transformative magic and alchemy. And that's what you're tapping into when you do necromantic witchcraft. So you guys need to understand that. And like I said, these forces are not to just be toyed with or approached without respect, because you can harm yourself, you can harm the people that are around you and in your ritual area if you're not careful and if you don't understand it right. So take it seriously, y'all. So that's just kind of like a summary of necromantic witchcraft and the forces of death and what they really are and what you're tapping into. And as I said, you got to have willpower, and you have to have pretty much like the basics of knowing how to do witchcraft in general before you really start to get into using these forces, because you have to be able to direct them into the right things and at the right in the right ways and all that. So now within necromantic witchcraft, there is subcategories of the different types of things you can do with these energies. And the first one I want to talk about is conjuration, which is working with dead spirits and with dead souls. Now these can be living souls from humans, or they could also be from animals, insects, I don't see why anyone would choose to do it with a plant, but I mean, I guess that's possible as well. Basically, anything that was once living as a being and died, you can work with their souls. And this type of necromantic witchcraft is called conjuration, because what you do during this is you will summon the soul that was released when that being died and is now non-physical and is now in the spiritual realm. You will be summoning that to do your bidding, basically. And really, you can make use of this with, to me, in my personal experience, the most powerful objects to use for conjuration are bones. I work with bones a lot, y'all. Bones are the most permanent part of a living being's body. So that even when it dies, even when it decays, usually the bones will still be there. And because of that, they are very potent tools to use for conjuration magic, for necromantic witchcraft, when you want to summon the spirit of that being to do your bidding, basically. So you utilize the bones. Now you can use different parts of the body also. If you have hair or fingernails from the person, from a person, you can use those for necromancy, for conjuration, to summon the spirits and everything. I wrote about all this in my journal, y'all, and my writing is kind of small. I'm trying to make sure I get all the different points about each little topic. You can use clothing, any type of normal object link that you would use for like making a spirit doll or something, or making a puppet. You will use similar objects like that to conjure dead spirits, and you can even actually bind them into spirit dolls. For instance, if you're making a spirit doll of one of your ancestors and you had an object link to your ancestor, you would use that in the formation of the doll, and then you would summon up the spirit of that ancestor and bind it into the doll, and then that doll will be alive with its own life force. And y'all watched my previous video about spirit dolls and puppets, so you can understand how that works and how to do it. So, and also you can do this with animals. Like, I have a lot of familiars that are from animals that I have found the bones when I go on my walks in the woods and my treks in the woods. I look for bones a lot because I love working with bones. And I have a lot of familiars that I have by summoning up their spirits by using their bones and binding them to me and into different objects. And you can even bind them into the bones itself. Because, like I said, bones are the most permanent part of the body. And even after something dies, its essence, its spirit will still have a link to the bones because of what is called the law of contagion. That once you touch something, you're forever connected to it. So just imagine the bones are in a being's body its entire lifetime. So they're just there absorbing and absorbing and absorbing that connection. Okay. I think that's basically it for conjuration. That's what it is. Okay, so now I want to talk about blood magic and sacrificial magic. If you do not know, those are different. And they're both considered branches of necromantic witchcraft. Okay, I'll talk about blood magic first. Blood magic is classified as necromantic witchcraft because what blood is it's the life force of a being. So with blood magic, what you will do is you will offer some of your blood as a witch or magician. You will offer blood of the person that you're doing spells for or doing magic for. You could offer blood from an animal. You could offer blood from the person that you're working magic against. Predominantly, though, witches will use their own blood for their own magic. So, when you do that, what you're doing is you're offering life force into the magic, into the spell or the ritual. And it's kind of like a trade-off. You're giving some of your life force, or the life force of your blood, or whatever blood you're using. You're giving that energy that is, once again, recycled as it dies, because your blood is full of living cells. So as those die, as that life force dies, all of that energy would naturally be recycled. But as a witch, as a necromancer, you will kind of step in where nature would normally just recycle that energy. You will direct where that energy goes, rather than it just being dissipated and dissolved. You will direct where that energy goes, be it by your means of spell work or ritual or whatever. You're going to step in and direct where that energy goes that's released, where that life force goes that's released from the blood. And so, you can do this with any type of spell, really. You could just add blood to it. Definitely, you want to make sure that you do not do this for like a curse or something. I mean, unless you really, really know what you're doing. I have never used blood in a curse because, once again, with that law of contagion, your blood is full of your DNA and it's been inside of you, so it's intimately linked to you. So if you don't know how to control that link properly and you're using blood magic to try to harm someone else or harm something, you may inadvertently harm yourself because you're putting your own blood in it, and that's linked to you. So just be careful when you're using it for those purposes, y'all. But I notice when it comes to blood magic that it's very, very potent and powerful. I mean, this is some serious stuff. It will basically fuel your spells and your rituals for, I mean, basically it's permanent. Not permanent in the sense that it's eternal, forever, to the ends of time and shit, but I mean it's permanent in the sense of, like, within your lifetime, it's going to last for so long that it's basically permanent. I mean it like that. So, if you want your spells to be, like, forever in your lifetime, or even sometimes with blood magic it will last even after you die, it will continue on for so long, because that's a potent amount of energy you're giving. You could use blood magic to give life force to your talismans, to your spirit dolls, to whatever objects you want to give a life force to. You could use it in that way. You could use blood magic as offerings to deities or spirits to kind of give them that life force energy. And I'll get more into that when I talk about sacrificial magic. But, or you could just use blood magic for a spell. You don't have to use it to give life to an object or whatever, or to give it to a spirit. You could just use blood magic in just a spell, that you're putting all that energy into that directed spell to do whatever that purpose is of your spell work. And like I said, with this type of blood magic, it will last for a really long time. So whatever you do with blood magic, make sure that you really want it, and it's going to happen and it's going to last. So make sure you really, really want that if you're going to be doing it, because it will come and it will stay. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about sacrificial magic now. Sacrificial magic is different from blood magic, because with blood magic you're just giving, some blood, but you're not actually killing anyone or killing anything. You're just giving blood from it or from yourself. But with sacrificial magic, you are actually killing an animal or killing a person even. Some people do it like that. You could even sacrifice insects and stuff like that. Now, I have never sacrificed a large animal. I have sacrificed insects, I'm not gonna lie. It's some pretty potent magic if you really want to get into that. And I'll explain to you how sacrificial magic works and what it's doing. Actually, I forgot to mention exactly what you're doing with the blood magic and why I decided to talk about necromantic witchcraft itself with the Samhain video. What you're doing with blood magic is you're also thinning the veil. So that's why I wanted to include necromancy, necromantic witchcraft in this video. With blood magic, by the fact of the different cells and life force in the blood dying, it causes the veil to thin. So that allows more of a tangible interaction between the spiritual and the physical. So that's why blood magic is so potent, y'all. Because in normal witchcraft or whatever, you're not necessarily thinning the veil. You can traverse it. You could send your spells across it. You could call energy from it. But that barrier, the veil that's there, stays the same amount of thickness. However, when you do blood magic, you're thinning the veil. So it's like it's even more of an effect, because even more energies can cross more easily and manifest more quickly and more powerfully. So that's why blood magic is so powerful. Okay, now when it comes to sacrificial magic, it's even more powerful. And I'm not necessarily endorsing this to y'all, so don't take it that way. I'm just educating you on these different things. Just because I feel like it's relevant to Samhain and to All Hallows Eve and the thinning of the veil. I feel like it's a befitting topic to include in this video. And plus, I'm just a dark-sided anyway, so. With sacrificial magic, you're actually killing something. And so what does that do? What is the inner mechanisms of that? Okay, once again, when something dies, its energy is all released from that form. And usually, nature will recycle that and dissolve it. However, as a witch, you can manipulate how this all goes down. So with the death of something, that veil that is there between the physical and the non-physical, it doesn't just thin, but it opens. So I don't think this is something that you would learn anywhere else. But basically, when something dies, it necessitates that the veil opens so that that energy, that spirit, can then go on into the spiritual realms. That's when something dies naturally, the same thing happens. The veil opens to allow that being, that spirit, to pass from the physical to the non-physical. So with sacrificial magic, you're basically forcing that to happen. You're kind of forcing the veil to open in order to allow that spirit to pass into the spiritual realms. Now, there's different options that you have with the whole process, really. So, with sacrifices, you can either allow the spirit to pass into the spiritual realm, to either be as an offering to a god or a goddess or a deity or another spirit, because that gives them more of a ability to affect the physical world. It's like it gives them a vehicle to then use to manifest in the physical world. Because that energy that's released, that life force that's released, if you give that to a god or goddess, then they can use it however they want. And of course, if you're working with that god or goddess or whatever, they might use it for you and whatever you're petitioning or whatever spell you're doing or ritual. They will use it for what you're asking for, basically. Or you can just offer it to them without asking for anything in return. You could just offer them that soul or that life force. Another thing you can do with sacrificial magic is you will not allow it to pass. You will not allow the spirit to pass through the veil. But what you will do is, because whether or not you allow that spirit to pass, when something dies, the veil opens. It's just the way it works, y'all. The veil opens automatically when something dies. It's just the way it works. So really, and this is really more of the darker aspects of necromantic witchcraft when you get into sacrificial magic. Because you really are doing something unnatural when you get into this. Even though, like I said, the veil opening is natural, by you causing it to happen and then using the energies kind of in a backwards way, which I need to describe that, it's unnatural. So what do I mean in a backwards way? Well, naturally, when something dies, the spirit goes from the physical realm into the spiritual realm. However, with necromantic witchcraft, with sacrificial magic, you can make that process go backwards because the veil will be open, and instead of you passing something from the physical to the spiritual, you can call things in from the spiritual to the physical realms. So you can do it backwards, basically. And I'll let y'all ponder the implications of that, because there's a lot that you can do that is very powerful when it comes to that. But I told y'all before, I'm going to keep something secret just because they're not for just anyone to know, especially beginners. But I'm giving you enough information that if you are a little bit of an adept, you can kind of, just kind of know, or kind of discern for yourself the implications of this type of magic. So you can call things through that open doorway, basically, where normally the spirit would go from the physical to the spiritual. You can call spiritual things, non-physical things, into the physical realm. And you can do that for spell work. You can do that to possess spirit dolls and other objects, and things like that. So, let's see. Another thing that you could do with blood magic and sacrificial magic is that you can invoke that energy that's released, that life force that's released. You can invoke that into yourself even. You don't even have to let it cross into the spiritual realm. You do not have to bind that soul into an object or a spell. You can actually invoke that spirit, that life force that was released, into yourself and really kind of nefariously gain more power in that way. One main way that is done is that whatever has been sacrificed will be eaten like after it has been sacrificed, it will then be cooked and prepared and eaten. And that is a way to invoke the life force of that being. Of course, this all has to be done in a ritualized way where you're controlling the energies. Because if you don't have that sense of control, then the spirit's just going to go through the doorway that opens. However, if you do have these rituals set up and everything, you will be able to control what the spirit does and where it goes. And when you eat whatever it is, you will then invoke that energy. Of course, you don't have to eat it. That's just a symbolic way and a ritualized way to represent that. But really, you could just evoke it and invoke it anyways, like regardless if you eat it or not. There are some different ways that the sacrifice is done. You can predominantly it is killed with a knife. The animal or whatever that you're sacrificing is usually killed with a knife, and specifically so that its blood will spill. Because I told y'all what the importance of blood magic and what that's doing. It's releasing all that life force energy. So traditionally, the sacrifice will either have its like throat cut, or like cut wherever on the body that allows like the maximum amount of blood to come out of it. This is some gruesome stuff, y'all. I'm not gonna say I endorse it, but it's the facts. It's how it's done, and I just want y'all to know. So after the animal has died, after the blood has been spilled and the ritual's been done, there's different ways that you can then deal with the body that will kind of not allow nature to do its normal recycling thing. So you can burn it, and this is probably the way that it is most often done. After the animal has been sacrificed, after the blood's been spilled, the animal will be burned, because this way you're controlling how that energy recycles. See, and when nature recycles these energies, it does it very slowly and gradually. However, when you burn something, all that energy is going very fast. So, of course, as a witch, you will sit there and while the animal's burning up, you can direct where all that released energy is going. Whether it be an offering or a spell or whatever. You can bury it. You can bury the animal. Also, that one's going to be also faster, because if you just bury it directly into the dirt or whatever, it will decay faster. I mean, it's not going to be as fast as the fire, obviously, but it will be faster to decay. And so your spells and all that, whatever you've done with that, is going to work faster. Like I said, you could eat it, which is probably even more faster than burning it or burying it. But once again, that is for taking that energy into yourself, rather than letting it go out into the world and do whatever. So that's essentially a pretty brief yet concise summary of necromantic witchcraft and the different branches of it. Conjuration, working with dead spirits, working with whether it be a human spirit or an animal spirit. Conjuration is summoning those spirits and working with them. Blood magic is, in effect, thinning the veil so that the energies can manifest more physically more tangibly, more quickly, and with more lasting results. And sacrificial magic is really directly opening the veil, rather than just thinning it. It's actually opening it and either sending things through or pulling things through to this side. So that's basically what it is, what necromantic witchcraft is, and how it works. So take that information and do with it what you will, or not, or just know it, and just know that much more about magic, y'all. When it comes to the necromancy, divination by the dead, watch my previous video about spirit communication. I think it's called Demonic Entity Part 2 on Spirit Communication. Watch that video on how you communicate with spirits, and do what I said in that, and then you'll be able to just do necromancy or mediumship and communicate with any spirit, including dead spirits, dead ancestors, and friends and family and stuff. You'll be able to contact with them and communicate with them. Of course, with the other branches of necromantic witchcraft, you could speed up that process. Also, during this time of year when the veil is thinned naturally, you can speed up the process of becoming a medium or learning mediumship, because the veil's already thin, so it's just easier to do. Or with necromantic witchcraft, you will use blood to thin the veil, and it's easier to do then. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about some other forms of divination, like Ouija boards and pendulums and tarot cards, because people have been asking me about that recently. With the Ouija boards, pendulums, and tarot cards, and runes, and like scrying, all these different forms of divination, really all those are just tools, y'all. And just like with other things, some of those tools are going to be more useful to a certain person than they'll be to a different person. Hold on, y'all. I'm sorry, y'all. My window blinds are open and there's something going on outside. There's people out there watching me and I just feel awkward. But anyways, with these different forms of divination, they're really all just tools. That they don't really contain any power of their selves. There is nothing in a Ouija board. There is no mystical energy in a tarot card. There's nothing about these tools that has its own power. All of the power is in you as the one using it, and as the witch or medium or whatever you call yourself. We are all people who do magic. Whatever title we use, we are magical people. I just call us witches. So with these objects that y'all are using, they're not powerful of themselves. They're just tools or vessels or vehicles that you, as the witch, as the practitioner, are giving energy. So when these people dabble, like when these ordinary folks dabble with Ouija boards and stuff, they're doing it unconsciously. They don't even know that it's their own energy and their own psychic powers that they're tapping into. So if someone's doing it, just dabbling in it, it's just an ordinary person who has no idea about witchcraft or any of these branches of magic, and they're just doing it to either scare theirself or just as a game, or just to play with it, just to test it, whatever they are going to tap into their unconscious energies, their unconscious psychic powers, and whatever they have in their unconscious, whether it's fear or whether in their unconscious they're just like, it doesn't work, it's not going to work. If they have fear when they're doing it, then that's what they're going to manifest through these tools. They're going to manifest fearful things and fearful situations. And now when a witch would approach these things, we take it very seriously, and it's not a joke to us, and it's not scary to us. We take it as a serious thing to get answers to real questions we want to know. And so that makes it a conscious thing for us, and a conscious tool. So by doing it in that way, that's what's going to happen. You're going to get real answers. You're going to get real information and stuff from these tools. I do want to tell y'all, I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all a Ouija board story from when I was a kid. This happened when I was like 11. So, if you've been watching my videos, you know I didn't start learning witchcraft until I was about 13. So, when I was 11, it was my brother, my stepbrother, my older sister, and my stepsister. And maybe, who was that? Another little boy, one of our friends. That's who it was. So, we had just moved into this new house. And it was across the street from the house that we lived in. And we moved across the street into this new house. And, in that house, we found a Ouija board. And, go figure, it was in my room, in the closet, on the upper shelf. We found a Ouija board in there, y'all. And it was like one of those old ones, like it was made out of wood. And, it was just up there in the closet, and we were like, okay, this is weird. Let's mess with it, let's see what it does. So that night, we all snuck out from our house, because we were still in the process of moving. When I say we moved, I mean we were really still in the process of moving into the house across the street. So we all snuck out that night and went over to the new house and got the Ouija board, and we were all there. We lit some candles up. The electricity wasn't on yet there, and we began to mess with that Ouija board, and of course unconsciously, like we were just the dabbling children, you know. And we started to hear strange sounds. We heard tapping. We heard like scratching sounds, and what else was it? I heard the tapping first and the scratching. The scratching sounded like it was coming off the bedroom door, like into the room. I don't know. I think we heard... This was so long ago, y'all. We heard a voice. That's what it was. We heard a girl's voice. First the tapping, the scratching, and then we heard a girl's voice. And then we were done. After that, we all stopped and we were like, fuck this. Let's throw this thing away. Let's get rid of it. Of course, we got scared because that's what we had expected. So, and I can't really remember what the Ouija board spelled out. It spelled something out. And I can't remember, but that's not the point I wanted to tell the story anyways. The point I wanted to tell the story is what happened next. So we wanted to get rid of the Ouija board, right? So, we took it outside and we poured gasoline on it and we lit it on fire. And y'all, that board did not burn. It didn't matter how many times that we put more gas on it. It did not matter how many times that we lit it on fire, held it in fire. It did not matter. That board would not burn, like, period. It got, like, a couple scorch marks on it, but it didn't burn. So we were like, what the hell, you know? So then we were like, okay, it's not burning, let's just throw it away. So we threw it away in the dumpster there that was on our street. And for about 3 months, that Ouija board would not go away. It was, it's like it stayed in that dumpster. No matter how many times the, what is it called? The dumpster truck, I guess? Or what is it? The trash truck? Whatever it is that comes and picks up the trash. No matter how many times that thing came, y'all, that Ouija board would always still be there in the bottom of the damn dumpster. After every time that the trash truck came, we would go out there to throw new stuff away. And that fucking Ouija board was down there in the bottom of the thing. Like, either, I don't know, y'all, it was either stuck down there with something, or it was just some kind of supernatural reason that it was just staying there and it would not leave. So finally we pulled it out again. And we're like, we gotta get rid of it. So we were coming up with ideas of what to do, and we were like, we could bury it. And we were like, no, that's not a good idea, because we don't want to bury it, you know, near any of our houses or anything, because we want it, like, away and gone, you know. So we were like, what can we do? And we couldn't think of a good idea. I think we thought maybe to give it to someone, but we were like, no, that's wrong. We can't just do that. We can't just give it away. So finally my mom found out about it. And she was like, of course, she was like a witch. So she knew, although this was all secret from us at the time, because I did not learn that my mother was a witch until I was 13, y'all. Was when she told me. But of course she knew what to do with it. So she's like, take it, cut it up, put it in a bag, fill that bag up with rocks, and go throw it in the river, because we had a river down the street from us, and let it sink to the bottom, she said. So that's what we did. We cut that board up, we stuck it in a bag, we filled that bag up with rocks, and we went out and we threw it in the river. And it did not come back. It was gone. And no weird stuff happened after that. So that's just an example, y'all, of what can happen if you dabble with these things. Because what you're really doing is you're dabbling in your unconscious mind when you're using these tools. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a Ouija board. It could be any tool that you're using. If you dabble with it, you're dabbling in your unconscious mind, and whatever is there, whatever associations you have to that object in your own mind are going to be what manifests. So, for instance, we all had fear in our unconscious minds about Ouija and Ouija boards. So that's what manifested to us, some fearful situations and things. So you really need to know that if you're going to be using these tools, know that it's tapping into your own mind's power and your own psychic powers. So don't have fears and all this of it. And if you do, then I recommend you don't mess with it then. It opens a doorway. And it's not necessarily a doorway, you know, outwardly. It's more of like a doorway, like into you. It's like into your unconscious mind, which I believe that your mind is one with all mind and everything anyways. So it is like an outer doorway and an inner doorway all at once. But really, I equate psychology with spirituality, so it's the same thing to me. There was one more thing I wanted to talk about in this video, and now I cannot remember it. I can't remember what it was. I don't know, y'all. I'm gonna have to save that for another video because I just can't remember. But so I just wanted to share with you all about Samhain, so you can understand it at the esoteric levels of what it is and what energies are going on, what it's doing. And I wanted to talk about necromantic witchcraft so that you could kind of understand that a little bit, and how it's connected to Samhain, and how they're all to do with the veil thinning and just the veil itself. So I'm going to go ahead and end this video because I can't remember what the other topic was. I'll probably be right back with another video. So hell to the witches, y'all, and blessed be.